Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Anuj Gupta. I'm the Deputy City Manager for the City of Santa Monica. And I want to welcome you all to our first community briefing. This is something new that we are starting as a new mechanism to engage and inform our community. Needless to say, we are in very unusual times, and we don't have a lot of the normal resources we do as far as in-person council meetings, the ability to come into City Hall, other mechanisms for our community to engage with city staff, learn more about what's happening in the community, and obviously public information has probably never been more important than it is now in the midst of a public health emergency that we're in. And so, we are holding this evening with community stakeholders, residents, business groups, neighborhood groups, to provide you with some key current updates on what's happening in the city, what you need to know about public health, public safety, economic recovery, some other key topics that residents and community members need to know. We have a number of different staff lined up to present to you today. And we do want to just make you aware that if you do have questions about any of the information or any of the topics that we're sharing this evening, there is a set of icons on the right-hand side of your screen, and if you hover over the icons, you'll find one that says Moderator Chat. You can enter in a question in that chat window, and if you have any follow-up or anything that wasn't clear about the information provided, we would be happy to clarify or provide some added detail during our Q&A period at the end. So with that, I'm happy to hand it off to our Interim City Manager, Lane Dilg, to walk you through our agenda and some of our key topics for the evening. Lane.
Thank you, Anuj. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I wish that we could be with you in person. We appreciate you taking a bit of time to talk with us this evening. As you can imagine, in the city, we receive any number of questions from members of the public, and we know that there is sometimes misinformation or not as much information as you need. We've been working on a number of tools across the city to improve the ways in which we provide information to you. This is one example, but it's also an opportunity for us to show you some of those new tools and also seek your feedback. So tonight we do want to hear any questions that you have. As Anuj said, you can use those through the moderator chat, but also in this period of great flux and change and really a barrage of information that is not only constant, but also important. We wanted to take an opportunity to talk with you as community leaders and stakeholders about what we're doing as the city and what we are seeing as the city right now. So our agenda, our agenda tonight goes through a few areas that we receive the most common questions on as members of the city administration. And I want to be very clear that tonight is not about policy. Your city council elected by the people are your policy makers. We make professional recommendations to council on major topics of importance to the community at regular council meetings. Tonight, though, we did want to talk about the COVID-19 emergency, provide some information that is ongoing and urgent that the community be aware of, and also talk about some brass tacks topics around the city budget, economic recovery and the efforts we've been taking, parking and street sweeping, which we know are topics of great concern, a quick update on public safety, and then a real focus on the ways that we're trying to provide public information and Q&A that you may have for us. Next slide. So COVID-19. You'll see at the top I have in the titles a paradigm that many are using to talk about COVID in this moment. Andy Slavitt, one of our national leaders on healthcare thinking, one of the first to really describe the period we are in as the dark before the dawn. So we have been in this pandemic for a very long time. It is exhausting, it is tiring, it is very hard to comply with the public health requirements because we are all so ready for this to be over. but it is very much not over. In fact, in LA County, we are in one of the worst and likely the very worst periods that we have seen in this pandemic. So we could use any number of statistics to show that, but today, LA County reporting approximately 7,000 new cases. Our 5-day average of new cases per day consistently above that 4,000 mark, but also increasing over time in a concerning way. The statistic we have paid most attention to in Santa Monica and throughout the county and state during the pandemic is hospitalizations. Do our hospitals have capacity? Do our healthcare workers, our partners at UCLA Health, at Providence St. John's, across Cedars-Sinai and others, do they have the hospital beds and the staffing for those beds, both in hospitals generally and in the ICUs, that they need to provide care to people coming to them? And I do see Janet Ramici is on the call with us today. Janet is the executive director at UCLA Santa Monica Hospital, and I appreciate you being with us today, Janet. We are very concerned about our hospitals and about the ability of the healthcare system overall to keep Santa Monicans and Californians safe and healthy. We know that there's been great progress made around public health and what can actually care for and take care of people who do test positive for COVID-19. But we need to be sure that our healthcare system has capacity to care for people. Those are the metrics that public health authorities are citing the most concern about right now. So highest number of new cases in LA County being reported today, but also our hospitalizations at the highest point in the pandemic. And Barbara Ferrer, our local public health official as the LA County Department of Public Health Director, stating that they're seeing increases that threaten to overwhelm not just our healthcare system in the county, but the entire state's healthcare system. Next slide. Governor Newsom, similarly looking at these statistics, and the California Department of Public Health, raising real concern that the state could exhaust hospitalization or ICU capacity if drastic measures are not taken. So across our public health officials, real concern in this moment. Next slide. Which is why you see a temporary targeted order from LA County Public Health. There has been some confusion in the city and in the county, and it's very reasonable confusion about who the public health authority is. Our public health authority is the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health, and those are the scientists and doctors on whom we rely to make determinations about when measures need to be taken to protect the public health. So a temporary targeted order issued somewhat in phases, but really yesterday, in place through December 20th, to really ask people to please, in this moment, stay at home as much as possible. So within the order, I'll walk through just a bit of it, but I know that many of you have seen the parts that apply most to you. What's most important for the general public? Face coverings, as we've said from the beginning, and Santa Monica, one of the first to move forward with face coverings. Face coverings required when interacting with anyone outside your household. In Monica, you're supposed to have a face covering on if you are within 30 feet of others. General rule, if you leave your household, wear a face covering. 6-foot distance required from others, and that is something across City Hall and otherwise. We need 6 feet of distance between anyone, between you and anyone that is outside of your household. And then as of yesterday, LA County saying no gatherings outside your household. So previously we had been in a space where they were saying it was okay and safe to gather with a few other people, with a pod of 3 households, as long as you were outside. Those of us with kids, that could present the opportunity for a pod of play dates, for many Adults, the opportunity to socialize with those outside your home, a select group of people outside safely. LA County saying not right now. Through December 20th, you need to be together with only your household. Gather with only your household. And I know we were all extremely disappointed to see not just indoor, but also outdoor dining now closed. Again, this is a temporary surge order. We hope that across the county, people will take this seriously, that we will see the numbers get back to a safe space, and that outdoor dining will be able to open again soon. But at this stage of the pandemic in the county, across the state, and nationally, based on the healthcare system, hospital beds, and the cases that they are seeing, LA County Public Health did make the determination that outdoor dining needed to close in this moment. We have had questions about whether parklets can be used as parks. That is not permitted under city orders. The parklets are licensed for outdoor dining by restaurants and are not parks for public use. So unfortunately, in this moment of the pandemic, we are in a place where outdoor dining is closed. As we talk this evening, a few common refrains that you will hear. First, again, the theme, dark before the dawn. On Saturday night, as my husband and son and I did what felt like our 100th puzzle at home on a Saturday evening, I did try to remind myself that my son will soon grow up, the pandemic will end, and the number of puzzles I have on a Saturday night with my family is not as many as I would like in my lifetime. A few more months of time at home with our household, really focusing on spending this winter at home to reemerge, as we will talk about as the dawn of 2021 comes. We do have some things that are open for essential needs. So the LA County order does allow essential retail at 35%. That is a reduction in capacity. So grocery stores, you will see reduced capacity, and we are watching whether that will create lines. We hope not. We hope they will be able to manage at that number, but we will watch that carefully. Essential retail at 20%, personal care services at 20%, fitness centers still allowed to operate outdoors at 50% of their outdoors capacity, and childcare still possible as it was under prior essential orders. We will still see drive-in movies. There are some operating in Santa Monica, but very important that you be in a car with your own household. As we look at that, and as we'll talk about repeatedly today and ongoing, please buy local. These orders are exceptionally hard for our business districts, for our local restaurants and our local shop owners. Many of them on the call with us today, as well as those who work to support them. And I want to say that this situation to run a restaurant in any moment is challenging. In this moment, it is just unbelievably hard. The economics don't come close to working. Please support your local restaurants by continuing to order curbside pickup and takeout to enable them to continue operations until we can get to the next stage and we can see the outdoor dining that we love reopen. Next slide. We receive a number of questions across the community about compliance and enforcement resources. I want to remind everyone, we'll talk about the city website in a little bit, but we do have a COVID-19 hotline currently operating during our business hours. That hotline is available here. You can also always email info@santamonica.gov with questions related to COVID-19. Our city compliance efforts are focused through our public safety officers, code enforcement, and new health ambassadors that we have brought on to support. If you do wish to report a concern to any of them, you can reach code enforcement during business hours or through info@santamonica.gov, or after hours, please reach out to the non-emergency Santa Monica Public Safety Communications line. You see that listed here, 310-458-8491. If you do have concerns after hours, please do use that number rather than 911 if it's not an immediate life safety concern. We've also included the number here for LA County Department of Public Health, which also enforces should there be businesses that are operating that are not permitted to operate. We are fortunate that in Santa Monica, we have worked closely with our business community and broadly seen largely compliance and an effort to work together to try to weather through this, but that number is available should you have significant mistakes. Next slide. City facilities and services, we will continue to offer to the extent that LA County Department of Public Health says it's safe to do so. The beach is open and available to you and your household together to enjoy. Our parks are open. Playgrounds, per the current order, will be closed. That was very disappointing for us as well. We opened them as quickly as we could when given permission, but we have been told now by Department of Public Health that playgrounds outside of schools and child care centers must close. We also, through our playground partnership program, do have SMMUSD elementary school fields open after school hours and on the weekends for the community to enjoy. Our library curbside, we will continue to operate. That's happening through our downtown Montana and Pico branch libraries, and we'll be sure to provide the link for the hours at each of those spaces. But do check the Santa Monica Public Library website. They not only have been running great programs around race equity and other topics of interest, but are also offering bundles of books that they compile for different age groups and interests. And my understanding is that the Montana curbside is now growing starter herbs that you can plant in gardens and otherwise. They're doing everything they can to be creative and innovative during their curbside operation. We are still offering childcare for those who really need it through our programs. And one of our most essential programs in this moment is our food pantry operating out of Virginia Avenue Park by appointment. I want to thank all of the community volunteers that have been engaged in that effort. Food insecurity in Santa Monica and otherwise is very real during COVID as unemployment increases. There are families and neighbors in our community who are experiencing very difficult situations and are heavily impacted. So we would encourage you, and we'll provide information toward the end, both to donate to that food pantry as we enter the holidays. And I really want to thank everyone who is engaged in volunteering at that food pantry and our farmers markets. Farmers markets we have operated throughout the pandemic to provide healthy and fresh food and to support our local farmers. For public health guidance, those are operating at 50%, and we appreciate all of the patrons who have taken efforts to ensure that you're following requirements for face coverings, for not touching or handling food, and for queuing with safe distance from one another. The Big Blue Bus, of course, operating essential transit throughout the pandemic. And City Hall here serving the public. Our city staff is working. The entire staff is working. We are in a posture where we have some of our city staff on site operating essential operations. Your public works staff, water division, all of our maintenance, our parks, our RRR, resources recovery and recycling teams, all fully active on site, along with our public safety facility, all of our fire stations, our code enforcement teams, and some essential staff throughout the buildings working throughout the pandemic to serve the public. Others of our staff, both for their protection, for your protection, and for the protection of our colleagues who are on site, are working from home. And for that reason today, we will go through some of the tools that we have to be sure you can find the people that you need. But we are all working, providing city services, and you'll hear about some of the economic development work that we have done throughout the pandemic in different postures, whether on-site or off-site. Next slide. So within the last couple of days, there are a couple of important updates. The county is really focused on skilled nursing facilities at this point. We support those efforts through our Emergency Operations Center, but they are very focused on ensuring that the increased spread does not heavily impact our skilled nursing facilities. They are increasing testing in those facilities and also doing increased compliance checks. The governor, we were very pleased to see, did announce a number of new financial support programs for businesses. We will continue to distribute this information to our business community, but want to be sure everyone is aware that these new financial support programs are available through the governor's office. And we have seen some promising news once again in Washington around bipartisan talks about federal stimulus. We do not yet have great hope that those will move forward, but we are watching them closely because we know how badly both our families and residents in Santa Monica and our local businesses need support in this moment to weather the next couple of months. Next slide. And so we have just a few more months, but we do at this point see the hope on the horizon. So whereas we were in a period of uncertainty back in March where we did not know what was to come and we did not know how long it would last, scientists and pharmaceutical companies across the world have been working to develop a vaccine, and we have seen very promising information out of Pfizer and Moderna, which do have vaccines proven effective at approximately 95% in clinical trials, seeking FDA approval, but even as they are seeking FDA approval, working through the very challenging questions around logistics and distribution. Good news is we are already seeing those vaccines shipping from Brussels out of Pfizer and moving toward the United States. They also have distribution and production in the United States. California now slated to receive 327,000 doses, 2 doses per person, so that would be divided by 2 in terms of people vaccinated, of Pfizer's vaccine by mid-December. This is very good news. This is only the initial shipment. I believe the number we initially saw was that they have 20 million vaccines ready to go across the country in their first distribution. But we do believe we will now see vaccines from Pfizer, from Moderna, and some other companies closely behind starting to be distributed. As those are distributed, we are starting to see the news with respect to how the vaccines will be distributed and to what populations. We do anticipate that the CDC's guidance will be purely guidance, and that the states will then make determinations as to how to distribute. And we have heard from the governor that we expect distribution to start with our healthcare workers and emergency responders who have close contact with those who are confirmed with COVID. So those who are caring for immediately those confirmed with COVID, the first to receive the vaccines, thus shoring up our healthcare system, which of course is the most important thing in terms of saving lives and providing care. Following that, we do expect attention to our congregate care facilities, to our skilled nursing facilities, and other places where workers and residents have increased exposure because of the proximity in which large groups of people live. And then we do expect to see distribution to high-risk populations and essential workers, including teachers. So lots of questions around vaccine distribution, but all of these becoming reality even as we speak, not just the development of the vaccines, which at this point have proven successful, but the distribution and providing of vaccination. From the city's perspective, we are working to ensure that we are prepared to help in any way that we can. We think it most likely that at some point we would be asked to help distribute vaccination or run vaccination clinics, which we would be preparing to do if called upon to do. But most of this happening at the federal, state, and potentially county level, city prepared to support as we are called on to do. Next slide. With that, I do want to answer any questions that are out there in the community toward the end of this briefing about COVID-19, but mostly want to ask of the community that we all come together in understanding the next month will be exceptionally difficult. We do need your help, both in modeling behavior and showing our community that this is a moment to take seriously. This is a moment, in some people's words, to hunker down, to find the warmth of winter with your own household, recognizing that the horizon is in sight, that we will make it through this, we will see 2021, and we will be focused on reopening very soon to come. With that, I want to turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Gigi Decavales-Hughes, done an exceptionally strong job weathering, overseeing the city budget over the course of the pandemic, and just provide an update on where we are with the city budget.
Thank you, Lane. So I do want to take just a few moments to give you some background on the budget and also let you know where we stand right now. You know, the first bullet on this slide is that we are in a strong and stable financial position, and that would be something that in past history, that has always been something that we were able to say. But when providing the background for where we are right now, I think it does make a big difference. So COVID-19 has had a devastating effect on local economies, and cities like ours with strong visitor-based economic sectors are feeling it the most because of the hit that retail, shopping, restaurants, tourism, and parking have taken. Early on in the pandemic, we projected that over 3 years, we would have a shortfall of about $224 million in the revenues that support our general government services. So we took some big steps quickly to preserve our essential services because we knew we couldn't rely on federal stimulus funds, as Lane just noted. And what we did is we drew down reserves we had set aside for situations like these, and we deferred less critical work. And then we also restructured our operations to align them with what we were able to offer given the public health restrictions. And the result is that we've been operating with a budget that's 3/4 the size of past budgets, but it is a fiscally sustainable budget. And we are happy to say that we do feel like we're in a stable position right now at a time that is so uncertain, where so many other cities are actually feeling the effects of not having made changes early on. We're at a better place. And so what we can do is focus on the future. We've had some good news along the way. We were able to add a small amount of one-time stimulus funds to address areas where we needed more help, like care for vulnerable populations and people who are experiencing homelessness in the areas of economic recovery, help with health order enforcement and trash collection. And we're so grateful to our residents for voting to pass Measure SM. This measure has allowed us to increase the documentary transfer tax. And this is a tax that's paid when a property is sold. And the measure is changing the tax for sales of $5 million and up. And this is going to bring in $3 million of much needed annual revenues as early as next year. And looking ahead, we'll be going back to Council in January to provide a mid-year status update on our revenues and expenditures. After that, we'll be reaching out to the community and to Council for feedback on priorities. Setting priorities is always a challenge, but we expect it to be even harder this year since the needs of so many of our community members and our, be it residents or small business owners, are probably different now than they were a year ago. and that they will be a year from now. In a world that is changing so quickly. We're also hoping to see some movement on a meaningful stimulus bill coming out of Washington, as Lane noted. And then in May, we'll bring Council a proposed biannual budget that will take into consideration the input we've gotten from the community, from our Council, any new economic data that we have, as well as our phased plan for recovery. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. But we feel confident that we are in a position to move forward. Thank you. Blaine, back to you.
Actually, Gigi, I'll take it from here. Thank you, Gigi, and thanks, Lane. Next, I'll be sharing an overview of our efforts and the progress that we've made since the crisis began, working across city departments and with, of course, a wide array of community partners to support a broad and vibrant economic recovery in these very challenging times in Santa Monica. Next slide, please. So what you see here, and for those of you who tune in regularly to City Council meetings, you may recognize a few of these slides. We gave a more detailed presentation to the community and to the Council as the City Manager's report in late October. But this slide, I won't read off everything here, but I think it underscores the point that as soon as this crisis hit beginning in March, and really every day since, not just city staff across every department, but pretty much every organization in the community, neighborhood groups, residents, businesses, business owners have stepped forward to put together a really impressive array of measures, do everything we can to support our businesses, our workers, and our residents in this unprecedented time. We have, as we'll talk more about in a moment, transformed many of our streetscapes with more in the works, with parklets, with redesigned streets, with outdoor space for dining, for retail, for fitness. We've revamped our permitting processes, improved our processes, put more processes online to turn things around more quickly. We've created an assurance program to ensure that our businesses have the tools that they need to open safely and protect their staff as well as their customers' health and safety. And we've worked hard to reopen our key public spaces as safely as possible. Of course, the pier being one of those flagship spaces where we've invested a lot of time, a lot of thought into doing that in as safe a way as possible. Next slide. So what you see here, and a point that we really are particularly wanting to underscore as we approach this holiday season, is that despite all of the challenges, despite all of the restrictions that are necessary for public health at this time, that Santa Monica is open for business. And as Lane said earlier, we are really doubling down, tripling down on the message of buying local for the holidays. What you see here is a resource map that we developed early on in the pandemic, and that our team, our Buy Local and Economic Development team, as well as our Information Services team, have been just improving and refining, every month. And now is a really detailed services map. It's an interactive map with all of the details of every category of business in the city that's operating, details about their hours, about any restrictions they have in place, what restaurants and retail are offering curbside pickup and delivery and takeout. We're doing everything we can to get our residents, our community members aware of and connected to how they can support our local businesses in this trying time. As we said earlier, this really is the season more than ever before to buy local. And so we have a Buy Local holiday gift guide that we have put together that you see the link for there. It's buylocalsm.com/gifts2020. Which provides all of the details that our community members need to know what Santa Monica gifts and gifts from our Santa Monica businesses to provide to friends and loved ones over the holiday season. We also have our Buy Local campaign at Buy Local SM on Facebook, as well as Twitter. And really, the point here is we're doing everything we can to make information and resources available so that everybody gets the message and knows, despite all of the restrictions, how they can support our local businesses, our local restaurants, and really do everything we can to keep them alive and surviving through this difficult time to get to that dawn period that Lane referenced earlier. Next slide. So as we've said, we're all learning to live our life outdoors. We're very fortunate to be in Santa Monica, a place where we can be outdoors for the most part 12 months a year, even if it is, of course, a little chillier and darker at this time of year than others. And what we've seen really is a transformation of our outdoor spaces. You see pictured here the fabulous pier deck that has been transformed into an outdoor fitness area for local fitness businesses, yoga and circuit training and other training opportunities that are also you see happening in parks, in parklets, again, compliant with all public health and face covering and distancing requirements. Outdoor services, we've seen, obviously some of that has been rolled back by the latest health order guidance, but we've seen massages and nail services being provided in outdoor parklet spaces. The sidewalk dining we've talked about, of course, we share the devastation of our community at the current temporary closure, but it has been overall in our city a tremendous success story. The Main Street Al Fresco project, the expansion of outdoor dining that we still have underway on Ocean Avenue, the parklets that we have across the city that have really been a lifeline for our restaurants and just a vibrant place for our community members to gather within their households, share meals, and create memories outdoors in this difficult time. And then the drive-in experiences that we had facilitated that we're hosting at the Santa Monica Airport's outdoor temporary space as again, just another opportunity to bring some light, bring some joy, and some shared experiences in a safe way at this time. Next slide. Again, just this map makes the point that we've done everything we can to permit temporary outdoor use of, private spaces, parking lots and the like, public spaces, as well as, the existing outdoor dining program that we had before the pandemic. And it's across the city, and it's a wide variety of uses. You see, overwhelmingly restaurants, but also personal services, fitness and retail, a part of the mix as well. Next slide. So I referenced earlier our Santa Monica Shines COVID-19 assurance program. We have over 40 businesses that now sport the Santa Monica Shines decal in their window, which demonstrates that they've provided the equipment, the training to open safely and to protect their staff as well as their customers. We have new businesses coming into this program all the time. It represents a great partnership between Sustainable Works, Travel and Tourism, Santa Monica College, and Arrow Up, a training business in the city. And we are, again, it's going to be something that I think will continue through next year to demonstrate to our community that we want to keep them safe and that our businesses are really stepping up to keep everybody safe as well. Next slide. So, of course, we recognize that in this time, for many folks in our community, it's the basic needs to keep their family above water that are the most urgent and important. And we've invested in our new emergency rental assistance program. We've secured $2.6 million in funding, a combination of city as well as federal funding for that effort, and supported over 500 families through this program. It really at this time, particularly with so many people facing furloughs, layoffs, the employment crisis, the economic crisis, it's been a vital addition to keep our families secure in their housing wherever possible. And along those lines, food insecurity, as Lane referenced earlier, we have seen tremendous support for our emergency food pantry. Virginia Avenue Park fed 250 families weekly, over 5,000 boxes of groceries passed out to date. We did a targeted event over Thanksgiving, where we distributed several hundred Thanksgiving meals to families in our community. And we're continuing, as you'll hear more in a moment, to focus on efforts to support food distribution and food security through the holidays. Next. So our team, as well as partners in the community, have also supported a number of webinars and trainings to support folks who are looking for employment, how to start a business, how to develop a business plan, or get connected to new employment opportunities. And another, of course, urgent need in the community, especially at this time, is childcare. And so we have, through our Santa Monica Shines partnerships, developed an inventory of available options for working families, both for childcare and resources to support distance learning that many of our children are, required to undergo at this time. So that, really, I mean, it was a lot of information there, but actually, scratches the surface and the tremendous efforts, not just of city staff, but of so many of the partner organizations and the community members, many of whom I know are represented on this call this evening, to again, and across the board, all hands on deck effort to support our recovery in our community and especially account for the needs of the most vulnerable members of our community in Santa Monica. So that's our economic recovery. Again, happy to field any questions on that at the end of our time. My next brief update, next slide, please, Aaron, is just on parking and street sweeping, which is always a topic of interest in the community. So I did want to share the calendar that you see on the screen illustrates that our current pattern for street sweeping is to conduct street sweeping for the first full week of each month. So for December, that means next week, December 7th through 11th. And then you see the dates there for the next couple of months, beginning in 2021. And that's when street sweeping enforcement and parking enforcement will be activated during those weeks of each month for the next 6 months. And then with regard to preferential parking enforcement, most of you know that with the exception of a few limited beachside zones, we had suspended enforcement through since the emergency began. We do intend to resume enforcement of preferential parking beginning in January 4th, 2021 to be exact. We've begun messaging that through Seascape, which should be hitting your mailboxes as early as this week, and we'll be getting the word out and would appreciate all of your support in helping us get the word out to minimize surprises for our community members. And we're trying to strike a balance here to ensure we're protecting that parking inventory, but also supporting our businesses at this time. Next slide. So I will hand it back now to Lane for an update on public safety.
So we know these are topics of continuing and considerable concern to the community. So just wanted to provide some very brief updates. I hope you all are aware that Chief Jacqueline Seabrooks returned to the city at the end of October and is working with SMPD on many of your concerns. Chief Seabrooks is providing updates regularly regarding her efforts and increased staffing, certainly during the election period, but now going forward into the holidays. We do also get questions about the after action report, so I want to be sure that everyone knows that those updates are being provided bi-weekly online and are available on the city website, as are ways that you can provide feedback and information should you wish to do that to the OIR group. And public safety reform efforts also underway, consistent with council direction and coming back to council in January. Next slide. We also get a number of questions about who to contact with various concerns. Obviously, we want the community calling 911 with any medical emergencies or any immediate threats to life or safety. We do have a non-emergency police issue number, which is the SMPD non-emergency dispatch line, which you see there. Should you experience people who are experiencing a psychiatric or mental health crisis, we do encourage calling the LA County Department of Mental Health helpline. And certainly for non-emergency concerns or service requests, we encourage you to go to santamonica.gov/works or the City of Santa Monica mobile app. The Santa Monica Works program is one, we won't provide a full update today because we are continually improving that program and hope to have some really substantive updates to it in January. But that is a program that allows us to ensure that we're tracking concerns that we get from community members, that when residents reach out to us, that it's not bouncing around in email in City Hall, but rather is entering a system where we can ensure that staff are responding to your concerns and responding appropriately, and that we're aware of issues that are generating significant community concerns. And finally, our team has provided an outreach. Should you want to contact someone for outreach request for a person experiencing homelessness, there is the LA Homeless Outreach Portal. Next slide. And now I'm going to turn back to Anuj for updates on public information.
Thank you, Lane. So I just wanted to review a couple of important updates on how we are connecting with and engaging our community in this very unusual time, and how you can stay informed and get involved. Next slide. So what you see here is a picture actually of a poster board we have posted outside of City Hall. But just to make the point that currently to protect public health and comply with our county guidelines, City Hall does remain closed to the public. I did want to point out that our website, which you'll hear more about from Jeremy in a moment, santamonica.gov, does have a very detailed Contact Us page linked at the top of every page in a red banner that you see at the top. And that page actually has detailed contacts and links for every department, issue, or service really that you could imagine. And I think we're continuing to encourage people to use that site, bookmark that site as a reference point to address questions, issues, phone numbers, or web forms that you may need to submit a request or get a question or a need for assistance followed up on in this time where we unfortunately don't have the ability to welcome you into City Hall to get that question answered in person. So with that, I will hand it off to Jeremy to talk about our digital services.
All right, thank you, Nuj. So as we touched on earlier today and throughout this presentation, we know that COVID has really accelerated and changed the way that we're delivering services to the community. And so as we continue to look at new and improved ways to serve our community, we recognize the importance of also developing enhanced and innovative ways to do so. In driving this effort, our goal is to provide continual access to information and resources through a 24/7 digital City Hall that provides the community with resources and information. Additionally, during this process, our priority is also to ensure that we're not only meeting but exceeding the standards for creating an equitable experience that serves everyone through easy access to information and resources in a way that really enhances our commitment to equity. And for those of you that have engaged with our city online in the past, you will all note that our experience varies depending on what information and resources you're using. So by different programs, by different websites. So moving forward, we're really going to be focusing on streamlining that experience to align with the city's brand and really create a unified experience for our users and for our community. So next slide. When we talk about the digital enhancements, one of the major cornerstones is the new city website project. And on October 30th, we launched our homepage, which was the first step as part of this project, and that can be found at santamonica.gov. This was just the first of many improvements that you'll continue to see over the next couple of months for the website, as well as to how we're really enhancing and delivering digital services online. The website was built using an iterative approach, which means that the enhancements that you're seeing right now on the homepage are just the first step, and we'll continue to roll out more and more features as they become available. And we felt that this was a more productive way of getting that information out there, especially during our evolving environment, instead of waiting to launch a completely new website when everything was completed. So in addition to updating the homepage, we also streamlined our web traffic through a single URL, santamonica.gov, and we continue to drive traffic to these other websites. So even though santamonica.gov serves as our primary website, a lot of the information still exists on smgov.net and across the other websites that we have. All of that information can continue to be accessed using the using the search function that's available on our site, as well as our new intuitive menu. Next slide. And so here's a couple examples of what the new website looks like. And what you'll notice is, as I mentioned, not only that streamlined branding effort, but really making sure that information is easy to find, it's intuitive, and it's straightforward. And so you'll notice here that at the top, we have our new menu structure, which I'll be going through shortly. We've brought search right up to the top of the page so that it's easy to find the resources and information that you're looking for, as well as making tools available to help elevate our top priorities. So in this example, you'll see that under the From Around Your City. We've also looked at our analytics, talked to our users, talked to the community to understand what services we know that we're engaging with the most, and moved those under the one section here called Services and Resources, as well as given a section where we can highlight initiatives and efforts that are really a priority for the city, and you'll see that right below. So while it's not pictured here, we also have brought in our news feed, which is pulling the latest information and resources into one consolidated place. And we'll be seeing as we introduce new enhancements that finding information and resources across sort of topics and category areas is really the priority in our approach with the new site. The next slide. So as I talked about a bit, in addition to the new homepage, we also have a new menu structure. And the way that we really focused on this menu structure was to know that our users don't engage with the site based on departments or divisions. So previously, users had to understand how our organization was structured. So they would go to the department that offered the service, then go to the division that offered the service, and then actually find the service. In our new menu, however, you'll note that it's really focused on how we know our users are engaging with the website and with our content. And that's based on topics and categories. And so you'll note that this menu is broken down to really break those down into areas that make sense. So we have programs, we have services, we have getting around, we have arts, culture, and fun, we have businesses, and we have your city hall. And so you'll see here that within the category of your city hall, we then break it down into another level, which is city management, departments, council and commissions, and so on. And from there, then you can find the information based on certain areas. So what are when we look at city management, the city manager's office, the city clerk's office. When we look at departments, the city departments. From there, we'll continue to build out the content so that you'll be able to find it more and more and more intuitively based on really how our users are experiencing the site. And in doing so, we'll continue to really think through what this means for the rest of the pages that we're building. What does this mean for search? What does this mean for how people are accessing information and resources, and how we can make sure that it's easy to find, and then once it's found, it's really intuitive to use. The next slide. And so while the website is a major part of our efforts, it's one of many that are happening around the city. Lane touched on one of them related to our Santa Monica Works program. And another one is the launch of our new virtual permit services. And this was recently launched by our Building and Safety Division, which was designed to really continue to provide permitting services in our modified environment. So by going to santamonica.gov/permitting, users are able to find instructions and details on how to schedule a virtual appointment for same-day over-the-counter review, be issued a permit virtually, or connect with building and safety technical review staff as part of the virtual building and safety counter. And you'll see the hours here that those different services are offered. And again, all that information can be found on santamonica.gov/permitting. So those are the two that we're updating you on tonight. There's a lot of other exciting initiatives that are on the way, and we'll be sharing information. And I'll hand it back over to you, Anuj.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. So we wanted to just conclude with a couple of key updates on how you, as our community members, our residents, our business stakeholders, can get involved and stay informed in this very dynamic time. So a couple of key ways to get involved that we wanted to really highlight tonight. First of all, we would greatly appreciate your helping amplify our message and our effort to support the holiday food pantry at Virginia Avenue Park. We've mentioned this now a couple of times this evening, and we're doing a special push through December to fund the holiday food pantry to support families in need of basic food and risk of food insecurity. And we are pushing our community through a variety of means, social media and other messaging to support at the website calfund.org/weareSantaMonica. And as we're saying in our messaging, a donation of $50 supports a family in need for 2 weeks, and a donation of $100 supports a family with food for the full holiday month of December. More broadly, the We Are Santa Monica Fund is continuing to grow through a broad array of private donations to support sanitation and medical supplies, food and shelter to those in need, and volunteer relief efforts. Again, our current push is really focused on the Virginia Avenue Park Holiday Food Pantry. One other item I wanted to flag is encouraging participation in our Housing Element Update Questionnaire. This is live through December 11th, and it is an opportunity for our residents and community members to weigh in on priority housing issues in our community. We prepare this crucial update to our planning document, the Housing Element, required by the state, which will govern our housing and a key portion of our land use planning over the next 8 years. So the website for that is santamonica.gov/housing-element-update. And again, we'll be making these links available and they're on our website and social media as well after this presentation. Next slide. So lastly, we just wanted to highlight the different ways that members of our community can stay informed and stay connected, given that we don't have the ability to serve our community face-to-face for the most part at this time. First and foremost, of course, is our homepage, our much more attractive and user-friendly homepage at santamonica.gov, as Jeremy outlined. Another key one for those of you who are not already, please, we encourage you to sign up to our emergency alerts, our SM Alert system, which you can register for through santamonica.gov/alerts. This will ensure that you get text or email alerts about everything, from late-breaking traffic closures, emergency, brush fires or traffic collisions that require street closures, to our crucial COVID-19 public health guidance, information about closures, other, key public health guidance that we need our community to know. Obviously, if there are other public health emergencies, we still, of course, do live in earthquake country and wildfire country. That's how we get our most critical and urgent information out to the community through SM Alerts. We also have our SAMO News community newsletter, which contains a lot of the key updates that we've talked about tonight, as well as other video and blog content at santamonica.gov/newsletter. And then Seascape, which is our quarterly community newsletter that goes out to every address in the city. And we have also our digital edition at santamonica.gov/Seascape. So with that, we're right at 6 o'clock, and we have time set aside now for questions from our participants and attendees at our session. I wanted to just thank all the different staff presenters, as well as the other members of the team who were responsible for pulling these updates together for the community. We've received a handful of questions, but not a ton yet. So please, if you do have questions, place them in the moderator chat, which you see linked on the right-hand side of your screen. And in the meantime, as we have our colleagues, monitoring the questions that come in, I think a couple of early ones that have come in focus on the question of face covering enforcement and the number of citations. So I can briefly address that, and then Lane, I don't know if you want to add anything further, but we do have a number of different teams. Code enforcement, our code enforcement division is, primarily responsible for both business COVID-19 compliance enforcement as well as enforcement in public spaces. But they are working with our public safety officers from our police department, as well as our new health ambassadors who are doing compliance checks in businesses across the city to ensure that not just face coverings, but all of the other components of COVID-19 public health guidance and requirements are being complied with. We are, leading, as most communities across the country are, with an education first approach, and all of our enforcement personnel do have face coverings, masks on hand to provide to community members. That is our preferred and our first solution is to remind people of the requirement. If they don't have a face covering on hand, provide them one. We have issued citations in the instances where we do see non-compliance by members of the community with those requirements. So Lane, I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to add on that question. Obviously, it continues to be a hot topic in the community.
Yes, we do know that this is an area of considerable frustration and consternation, and it is for us as well. We have tried many approaches. We continue to try many approaches. We are allocating our resources toward priority spaces and to really trying to ensure community-wide compliance. In that, I want to thank our business partners who really have been working with us through Santa Monica Shines and otherwise to try to create safe environments throughout Santa Monica. We do know that parks continue to be an area of concern, and we have increased the use of public safety officers in our parks for that reason. And we know that the beach, particularly south of the pier, is an area that's generating concerns, and we are trying to devote more resources there. Some of the concerns that you see are quite frustrating to us as well, particularly the pickup sports games that sometimes do pick up and leave when they see enforcement authorities coming, but that does not mean that we will give up. We have engaged with those groups. We will continue to engage with those groups, and as we see the larger closures, it does mean that we have even more eyes than before on those groups, and we'll continue.
Thanks, Lane. I think another question that we received was on the question of the budget. So Gigi, if you're available, perhaps to field this one. A question was provided about what has been put in the budget in the last few months and whether the police are getting new equipment via that budget. So Gigi, do you want to field that? I don't think that there's anything specific that I'm aware of that is in reference to, but Gigi, if you want to share kind of what we did perhaps at year end to clarify what went to the council in that budget and then what we have forthcoming.
Yes, so we have not added anything to the police budget. The police, like everyone else, did have budget reductions as part of the restructuring. As we are moving forward, again, we are looking to see how people and how all departments are handling their smaller level of operations. But we are not seeing, we're not looking towards putting any additional money at this time into the police budget. If that was the question, is what equipment was added to the police budget?
Gigi, I can jump in and answer that. And, I want to thank again everybody for joining. As always, challenging Zoom environment and speaking into the void. I can see your familiar name, but I can't see all of your faces. There was confusion related to the police budget in the beginning. In one of our first budget proposals back in May, we had proposed shifting the Office of Emergency Management, which handles our dispatch communications, as well as our Emergency Operations Center. We had proposed moving that over to Police and Fire for management. It's currently within the City Manager's office. We then did not move forward with that, in part due to the pandemic and based on other concerns about the way dispatch operates. We actually maintained the Office of Emergency Management in the City Manager's office. That sounds like a lot of bureaucratic gobbledygook. It's not, because our Office of Emergency Management is incredibly important to the community, and our ongoing management of that office is very important. And I'm going to go sideways for a second here. During the pandemic, we operate with an executive policy team that includes the Emergency Management Center and often the police and fire departments. But what that meant budget-wise is that it appeared in our early proposals that there would be an increase to the police budget. There was not in the end. There was a 3.3% decrease to the police budget as part of the restructuring. That was a comparatively lower decrease than many other departments took in the restructuring. And the reason for that, as Gigi said, was the focus on essential operations during the pandemic. There have been many proposals and council direction to ensure that as we look forward, we acknowledge the need to provide community safety and community care through the many other services that the city provides as well. And that is something that, that I imagine council will be very attentive to in the budget process. That may have been the source of confusion. It appeared there was an increase to the police budget. That was not the case, and we have not increased the police budget since. It is true that our police department took a 3.3% cut in the restructuring, which is comparatively less than many other departments.
Thanks, Lane. I think the last couple of questions that I see relate to outdoor dining. We had one question with regards to whether we would shut down outdoor dining when and if it starts to rain, and a question about when we would estimate that indoor restaurants will be able to open, and then another suggestion that we consider an incentive and reward system for outdoor dining managers who show exemplary adherence to COVID safety as opposed to the blanket closure. I think this gets back to the point that Lane shared earlier, which is that our public health agency for the city of Santa Monica is the LA County Department of Public Health. We do not, unlike just a couple of cities in our county, have our own public health department, and so we are, bound by the guidance, that's issued by their health officer order, and as that gets updated, we are required to implement that. As with regards to rain or inclement weather, I know that many of our restaurants and business community members, of course, had worked with our staff to develop protocols and ideas for how we would kind of winterize our outdoor spaces, and invested in heaters and looking at what kind of coverings or tent type solutions would be available that would be compliant with public health. Obviously, at the current moment, that's not relevant, unfortunately, with the temporary closure, but we will, and Jennifer Taylor, our economic development manager, had been working on developing that, all of these sort of outdoor dining winter protocols that we'll be prepared to support businesses with, when we get the green light to resume outdoor dining, hopefully within the next few weeks, depending on the guidance that we get. With regards to indoor dining, unfortunately, again, I think we are a ways away from that, but we'll be bound to the health officer order from the county. So we don't have anything further, I believe, Lane. The one other question I think that was raised, I think from Zeno, was whether the slides are going to be posted online, and the answer to that is yes. Actually, we'll be posting this full recording of this briefing on our city's YouTube channel so that anyone who missed it can see it there, and also so that our neighborhood groups and others can distribute it to their members and ensure that folks have the information that they need.
So I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. I know that you attend many Zoom meetings, so and this one, of course, being Blue Jeans, but we really do appreciate you taking the time. We appreciate you being partners in sharing information with the community. The primary message we want to send is that we do need the community to take seriously the moment that we're in the pandemic, and that we are very much moving closer to reopening, to the bright future, and to the horizon that we can now see ahead. So if we can come together around this, we really look forward to seeing those COVID numbers go down, seeing the stabilization of our healthcare system, reopening outdoor dining as soon as the county will let us, and continuing to facilitate our residents' enjoyment of our beautiful outdoor space and our local businesses operating in our environment. In the meantime, we likely won't do another one of these in December. I do hope you'll reach out either to info@santamonica.gov or manager at, I'm going to get my own email address wrong, so we will put it in manager.mailbox@smgov.net, and maybe we'll improve that one too. But please do reach out if there are topics you'd like to see covered in a similar briefing. If you have thoughts on the format, our desire is simply to engage with you to make sure you have the information. Just a reminder, please do buy local, enjoy our local restaurants through takeout and pickup, and thank you for everything that you do for our community. Thanks, everyone.